the first video of the BladeTechTalk series, I was talking about the frame length, and it received quite a lot of comments. Not all of them were positive. So after going through all of them, I decided to extend the format of this series a little, such that first I make the original video where I express my thoughts or explain certain concepts. Then I wait, collecting all sorts of comments about that video, and then I make another one called Afterthoughts, where I address all those comments. Because in the end, I'm a human myself, so I can make mistakes, or I can say something wrong, or miss some ideas or some details, which other people watching my video can find and point me to them. So in this way, we can keep sort of a more dialogue format to this series. And in this particular video is an afterthought to the original one where I was talking about the concept of frame lengths. If you haven't seen it yet, I strongly recommend to do so. You can find it right there. So going through all the discussions I've had regarding this original video on YouTube, on Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, I would boil them down to the following 4 comments. First, that most of what I said was bullshit, and I'm just following a new marketing trend of long frames, and I'm just trying to sell you those frames. Second, that I don't take into account the economic side of skate manufacturing, and that taking all that into consideration, 4x80 is in fact a good one-fits-all option and is perfectly fine starting option for any skater. Third, that a longer frame requires stronger muscles, and in general a skater needs much more experience to be able to ride a longer frame. And fourth, that I've been mostly talking about the benefits of longer frames while not talking enough about the benefits of shorter frames that also exist. So now I will go over these 4 comments and address them one by one. So first, that I'm just trying to sell you longer frames. I want to stress it. The purpose of my video was really to explain the concept of the frame lengths, and I think that's what I spend the most time in the video on, explaining how it works and how it affects your feel. It's totally up to you which frame lengths to choose for yourself. I don't own a skate shop to show you all possible skate frame variations that exist on the market, and I'm not sponsored by any brand to use consistently frames of one brand to demonstrate you what I want. So I happen to have these 2 as the shortest and the longest frame, so I use them to demonstrate the concept of frame lengths in the most visible way. So if you took a typical free skate setup in any skate shop, you will see that a bigger boot and a smaller boot, they usually come with the same frame. It is obvious that they will feel different because of these different proportions between the frame lengths and the boot size. This is just common sense and laws of physics. It's up to you how much emphasis to put on it. You can always ignore it, but it doesn't change the fact that this is true and this is how the world works. Now, I of course understand that there can be exceptions, like there can be a tall guy with large feet that is just naturally good at balancing, and maybe he doesn't really feel any problems even when his frame is shorter than his foot. It can be. Or maybe a guy starting skating had some activities in his life before that have already trained his balancing system so well that he doesn't feel any problems skating such a short frame. But I'm talking about the general rule that if you take an untrained person that is average in their skills of balancing, they will feel much more comfortable on a frame that matches their foot size rather than on a frame that is shorter than their foot size. And in fact, if you go look at the comments to that first video, you will see some from the people with large feet who were actually mentioning their problems with the 4x80 setups. And that once they switched to longer frames, they started feeling much better and much safer. Now, the second comment, that 4x80 is still a good one-fits-all option. I can agree with that just from an economical point of view, if a manufacturer takes a decision to produce all ranges of boot sizes for people with different feet, but he wants to save money on frame manufacturing and they want to make just one frame, they will take a distribution of the feet sizes, take a median, and use that one. So it can well be that 4x80 with their 243mm would fit closer to an average foot size on planet Earth. And for example, if you take some recreational skaters who don't do anything more sophisticated than just casual strides, some dragging T-stop, and that's it, and they never go really fast, don't do any jumps or tricks, then again, this balancing is less of an issue, and 4x80 probably could be perfectly fine for any skater. But with this series, I am addressing more skaters that take it more seriously and they want to do more than just recreational skating. And my reasoning is that I doubt a lot that a recreational skater would go and watch 15-minute video about frame lengths, and they probably wouldn't look for such a video in the first place. So with this series, I am addressing more serious skaters who want to do something more risky, and that's where balancing becomes much more of an issue. But the truth is that even those higher end, more expensive, better built free skates are still sold usually as complete setups where frame is already included. So they are addressing these more demanding skaters who in principle should know what they want from their skates, but they still include that 4x80 frame that for that level of skating is not always the best option. So my main request probably would be to sell the boots separately from frames. Do not include it or make it as easy to buy a boot-only version of a skate as it is right now to buy a complete setup with already frame, wheels, and bearings included. So probably my advice to you as a skater would be just to invest a bit more time into searching and finding a shop that does sell boot-only versions of a skate you want and buy just a boot and then pick the frame independently in a way that it matches your foot or your style of skating that you want. And this approach might not be as realistic as it is now a few years ago because the choice of skate frames was quite smaller in the past. But in the recent years, a lot of options have appeared with frames of all possible wheel size combinations, like starting from 4x76, 4x80, 4x84, 4x90, 4x100, 4x110. Then you have 3-wheel frames, 5-wheel frames. So now pretty much anyone can find a frame on the market that is really close to their foot size, or a little shorter or a little longer, depending what effects you want to gain. And because now you can find all these kinds of frames with slight rocker, you don't have to care about the maneuverability. It's now out of question. So you can really concentrate explicitly on the frame lengths and find the perfect one for you. Now, about longer frames requiring stronger muscles and more experience. This is not exactly true. In this series, I am taking more of a scientific approach in the sense that I'm trying to separate different concepts and different effects from each other as much as possible. So when I'm talking about frame length, I'm really talking just about length of a frame. or distance between front and rear axle, and I'm ignoring other effects like wheel size, weight, whatsoever, because I'm talking about a specific physical concept. So if you stick to a four-wheel geometry where wheels have 1 millimeter space in between them, then of course, longer frame means you have to use larger wheels. Larger wheels means that you are higher from the ground, which requires more strength in your muscles. Then bigger wheels mean they will be heavier, so they will have more inertia. So when you do some tricks or jumps, you have to raise your feet from the ground and rotate them in some way. Heavier setup will make it more difficult, requiring more muscle strength, more stamina for some longer skate sessions, and in general more experience from you as a skater. But all these effects are indirectly related to the frame length. They are directly related to wheel size, the number of wheels, the material from which the frame is made and wheels are made, and many other things. But when you are talking about frame lengths, those things are secondary effects, because you can always make a longer frame but with 3 wheels instead of 4, and your setup will be actually lighter. Or you can make a longer frame by adding 1 more wheel of the same size, so your height from the ground will remain the same. So these concepts I will address in the other videos of this series, but they are not exactly fitting this one where I'm talking about the frame length. And finally, talking about the benefits of shorter frames. It is true I was a bit biased because I find the longer frames being underrepresented and not getting enough attention, so I was more concentrated on that. The shorter frames, there are plenty of them, they have been for a long time around, so I assume people know more about them. But it's true that for completeness and for this scientific approach, I should be more balanced in the topics I cover. So, what are the benefits of shorter frames? So like I said in the first video, it has to do with this distance between the first and last wheels that touch the ground, affecting the lever arm during the rotation when you want to change direction during skating. So obviously the shorter is the frame, the smaller is this distance, and the easier it is to rotate it. Therefore, it makes it more maneuverable. This maneuverability is important for certain styles of skating. The ones I know best are hockey, where you want to be agile and do very quick turns, sharp turns. On a longer frame, it's going to be more difficult because it puts more resistance, and because of longer base, it also the turning radius is larger, so they are less agile. Shorter frame is more maneuverable, lets you change directions much faster. Slalom or dancing on inline skates are again things where you want to use a little space but do some sharp turns or maneuvers, staying just on one wheel. When the frame is long, it's going to be more difficult again because it's less maneuverable. But on the other hand, what is common for slalom is that you use your front and rear wheel quite a lot, like being just on toes or just on heels during some spins. And I would imagine that it again would feel more natural if this rear wheel is right under your heel and this front wheel is right below your toes. So it's like a natural way of balancing on them. If they are outside of your foot, it will require much more strength in your muscle to again counteract that lever arm created. But then when it's shorter than your foot, it might feel weird as well. For example, on a heel, when you are not balancing on your heel, but on a point that is more inside of your foot, I don't think that's going to feel very well. So again, the frame has to be shorter a little, it has to be maneuverable, but it still should somehow match your foot. So that's why I think they are using rocker, such that it still is maneuverable, but is about the length of your foot, such that those pivoting points are in the proper positions. Then again, there are these secondary effects, like shorter frame can be lighter, again making it easier to do some sudden moves. If it uses smaller wheels, it will be also, the whole setup will be shorter. So for example, if you want to do crossovers with a longer frame, you have to use a wider stance to avoid tripping. With a shorter frame, this is less of an issue, so you can use a shorter or more normal stance. And again, it makes it faster and more agile because you don't have to first spread your legs for doing a crossover. But again, this is effect of the total length of the setup, not specifically the frame length. Because you can have very short frame, but with 110 or 125 millimeter wheels, making the whole setup still quite long, and it will not feel as agile as 4x80, for example. And I would like to also mention that just a few days after I posted my first video, there was a new How to Be Unpopular podcast released with Leon Bezin, the inventor of wizard frames, where he was criticizing the hype around big wheel 3 skates, mainly for the fact that they provide you much higher speed because of the bigger wheels, combined with a shorter base, making it much more unstable than even a typical 4x80 setup, and causing a lot of people getting injured because they are not experienced enough for such a setup. So this is not to say that big wheel 3 skate setups are bad. Absolutely not. They have their own benefits. What I want is you to appreciate all those differences and understand where they come from, such that you can decide on your own whether you want a bigger wheel, shorter frame, or smaller wheel, longer frame, or something in the middle, such that it matches your skill level and allows you to get from your skates the feel that you're after. So I hope I have addressed the main points of criticism to my first video, and I think I will keep this format for all the future videos of the series. I think in the next video I will be talking about frame build and rocker, comparing different rocker geometries as well as different frame mounting standards, as well as how different materials or geometries affect the feel of the frame. So stay tuned and see you in the next video. Cheers!